For 5,000 years, we believed the Great Pyramid was built by the sweat of 100,000 slaves. But the truth is far more haunting. The pharaohs didn't use mere muscles, they used music. The Giza Plateau stands as a silent sentinel under the golden light of Ra, its shadows stretching back to the dawn of human memory. We look at these monuments and see stone, but we are actually staring into the face of a mathematical impossibility. Mainstream history paints a picture of copper chisels and hemp ropes, of endless lines of laborers straining against the oppressive desert heat. I mean, it's the story we've all been told, right? But when you stand at the base of the Great Pyramid and gaze up at the 2 million blocks of limestone and granite, that narrative begins to crumble like sun-bleached papyrus. Consider the king's chamber. Deep within the heart of the structure, 70-ton granite beams sit perfectly leveled, hundreds of feet above the desert floor. Incredulous, to move these today would require our most advanced industrial cranes and a massive feat of modern engineering. To the ancients, you see, it was seemingly routine. They achieved a precision that matches the work of a modern master watchmaker, yet they functioned in an era we dismissively label as the Bronze Age. Science often ignores the most glaring question: how did they truly defy the laws of gravity? The answer isn't found in the primitive tools recovered from the sand, but in the echoes vibrating within the stone itself. Dramatic. We have been taught to see the pyramids as silent tombs, but what if they were massive, resonant instruments designed to harness the very heartbeat of the earth? Our entire understanding of the human story is about to be shattered by the power of a single forgotten frequency. Whispering, the silence of the pharaohs is over. The stone is finally beginning to speak. For centuries, the storybooks have sold us a tale of Bronze Age ingenuity. Reflective, they tell us that tens of thousands of laborers, armed with nothing but copper chisels, hemp ropes, and sweat-slicked wooden sleds, carved 2.3 million stone blocks from the bedrock and hauled them into the sky. I mean, we are told to believe that these men, toiling under a blistering sun, achieved architectural perfection that modern engineers, with all our laser-guided cranes and steel-reinforced concrete, still struggle to replicate. Consider the math for a moment, right? To finish the Great Pyramid in 20 years, an average of 1 block would need to be set into place every few minutes, day and night, for 2 decades. That is not just construction, that is a relentless, impossible assembly line. These copper chisels, soft and easily dulled, would have been reduced to scrap metal against the unyielding granite within hours. How does one dress a surface to 1/1000th of an inch with a tool that cannot even scratch the surface? The official lie crumbles under the weight of its own logistics. It demands we ignore the reality of human limitation in favor of a comforting primitive myth. But if the sweat of the laboring masses isn't the true story of how these stones moved, what force was really at play?
Walk with me into the king's chamber, the heart of the Great Pyramid. It is a place of heavy, suffocating silence. Yet those who have stood there alone speak of an eerie, pulsating resonance that seems to vibrate in the marrow of their bones. The chamber is constructed from red granite blocks of immense size, fitted together with such precision that not even a human hair can slide between them. Why build such a fortress of resonance in the middle of a desert? Why use stone capable of holding an electrical charge and humming with low-frequency energy? The mainstream narrative dismisses this as a mere burial vault, yet there is no sarcophagus of a king, no hieroglyphics, no offerings, only a stone box that acts as a tuning fork for the earth itself. It is as if the builders weren't just stacking stones, but calibrating an instrument. And if that instrument was meant to be played, the sound it produced might have been the key to everything. But we have to wonder if these massive monoliths were truly moved by sound and vibration. Why was this knowledge buried alongside the pharaohs? And more importantly, what exactly were they attempting to amplify? That, however, is a secret hidden in a frequency that the history books are terrified to play. We stand now at the threshold of the Giza Plateau, looking past the weathered, ancient faces of the Sphinx toward the silent, towering giants of the past. For centuries, Egyptologists have peddled the story of bronze chisels and wooden mallets, insisting that the thousands of blocks forming the Great Pyramid were shaped by hand, stone by stone, by a massive labor force. But when you step close enough to touch the granite and the black diorite, the silence of the desert is broken by a haunting contradiction. Diorite is a stone so unforgiving, so incredibly dense, that it ranks near the top of the Mohs scale of mineral hardness. It is harder than iron, right? Yet we find artifacts from these ancient sites that possess perfect, circular drill holes. Look closely at the walls of these sarcophagi, and you will see marks that are not the jagged scars of a chisel. Instead, they are uniform spiral grooves, a signature left by an object rotating at a high speed, sinking into the stone with the ease a hot knife through butter. Fascinated, building momentum, when engineers analyze these grooves today, the numbers defy every textbook account. The feed rate, the speed at which this drill bit penetrated the diorite, is 500 times faster than what our most advanced industrial-grade diamond drills can achieve. Slowly, with gravity, it is not merely an indication of advanced mechanics, it is a physical impossibility for the tools they claim were used. These are not just scratches in the dark, they are the fingerprints of a technology that bypassed friction entirely. The evidence suggests that the ancient builders were not fighting the stone, they were manipulating it. These ultrasonic machining signatures reveal a process where the tool likely resonated at a frequency high enough to cause the rock to lose its structural integrity. I mean, think about it. It wasn't about brute force. It was about finding the harmonic pulse of the material itself, and for a fleeting moment, turning stone into a substance as malleable as clay.
Yet, if this technology existed, if they truly possessed the keys to the atomic vibration of matter, where are the machines? Why are we left only with the remnants of what they carved, and not the engines that carved them? The answer might be hidden in the very precision of these cuts, because the further we look into these geometric anomalies, the more it becomes clear that these weren't just construction sites. They were tuning forks, aligned to a celestial frequency that remains just out of reach. But as we dig deeper into these impossible excavations, we uncover something even more unsettling. A hidden chamber, untouched for millennia, that holds a geometry that shouldn't exist at all. If you step back from the massive, gravity-defying stone blocks of the Giza Plateau, you begin to see the architecture not as a product of muscle and sweat, but as a frozen symphony. To the ancient Egyptian, the universe was not merely made of matter, it was composed of hekau, words of power, vibrations that held the very structure of reality together. They understood something that modern science is only just beginning to grasp through the study of cymatics. When you place sand on a metal plate and subject it to specific sound frequencies, the grains don't move randomly. They assemble into perfect, complex geometric patterns, mandalas of order, born from the chaos of noise. The Egyptians viewed the world through this lens of harmonic resonance. They believed that to build a monument that could withstand eternity, one had to match the frequency of the earth itself. This brings us to the sistrum, an instrument often depicted in the hands of temple priestesses and dismissed as a mere ceremonial rattle. But examine the design, the bronze frame, the sliding crossbars, the deliberate weight distribution. This was not a tool for entertainment, it was a precision oscillator. When shaken, the metal bars produced a high-frequency acoustic wave, a standing wave capable of disrupting the molecular tension of materials. Imagine the scene. The master builders do not haul these blocks with ropes and ramps. They gather in circles, the air humming with the rhythmic, calculated vibration of dozens of these instruments, locking onto a precise tone. Under the influence of this resonant frequency, the dense limestone loses its resistance. The heavy mass becomes light, susceptible to movement, almost fluid. It is the bridge between the mystical invocations of the ancients and the rigid laws of physics we study today. We are looking at a civilization that didn't just understand sound, they commanded it. But if they possessed the key to manipulating matter through vibration, why did this knowledge vanish, leaving us to stare up at these monuments in total confusion? The truth behind the silence of the temples might be far more dangerous than we ever dared to imagine. Beneath the Giza Plateau lies a secret written not in ink, but in the very molecular structure of the earth itself. We have long assumed the builders of the pyramids were masters of raw labor, but the evidence suggests a mastery of something far more elusive, the geometry of sound. This, you see, is the master strategy of the unseen wave. Imagine a stone weighing 70 tons hovering in the air as if weightless. It sounds like the work of myth, right? Yet science reveals the phenomenon of acoustic levitation. By generating a standing wave, a precise frequency that pushes against the force of gravity, objects can be suspended in a state of impossible animation. The ancients were not just architects, they were sound engineers on a planetary scale.
The secret was locked in the limestone. The Giza Plateau is composed of nummulitic limestone, a material naturally embedded with tiny fossilized shells. These fossils act as micro-resonators. When struck with the correct frequency, the entire plateau could vibrate, creating a localized field of low gravity. But how did they generate the sheer power required to manipulate such massive blocks? I mean, it defies logic. The answer lies in the mineral composition beneath the foundation. The granite used in the king's chamber is rich in quartz, a piezoelectric material that generates electricity under mechanical stress. When the pyramid was capped with gold and exposed to the atmosphere, it acted as a massive harmonic receiver, converting the vibration of the Earth's own seismic frequency into an acoustic force. They were not hauling stones, they were tuning the mountain. But even with this resonance, the challenge remains. If the plateau itself was the engine, why did they need to align the structures to the stars with such mathematical perfection? The answer to that mystery leads us into an even deeper, more unsettling realization, one that suggests the pyramids were never meant to be tombs at all, but something far more functional and far more powerful. Step inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid, and the air, it just shifts. It is heavy, expectant, and unnervingly silent. You are standing inside a massive sarcophagus of red granite, a stone hauled from Aswan, hundreds of miles away. But look closer at the very composition of these walls. They are not merely stone, they are crystalline. Analysis confirms that this granite contains over 55% quartz.
You see, in our modern age, we use quartz for its piezoelectric properties. We know that when you apply mechanical stress or high-frequency vibration to quartz, it generates a powerful electrical charge. It is the heartbeat of our watches, our radios, and our precision technologies, right? The ancient Egyptians, those masters of a lost science, were placing themselves inside a massive energized circuit. I mean, if this room was not a tomb, then what was it? Consider the sheer precision of the construction. The king's chamber is connected to the outside world by two narrow, perfectly angled shafts. For centuries, Egyptologists dismissed these as ventilation ducts. But why ventilate a tomb that was sealed shut? It makes no sense. When you analyze the geometry, a more startling picture emerges. These shafts behave exactly like waveguides. They are engineered to channel sound and seismic energy from the earth, focusing it into this chamber, amplifying it until the very air becomes an engine of pure, resonant frequency. If the chamber acted as an acoustic resonator, the vibration would have been immense. It suggests a process where sound was used to manipulate matter at a molecular level. We are talking about the manipulation of gravity itself, using the pyramid as a lens to focus the Earth's natural hum into a singular point of intensity. But if the architects truly possessed the ability to levitate and move massive stones through sound alone, what happened to that technology when the last priest left the plateau? The mystery deepens when we examine the sarcophagus at the center of the room. It shows marks of high-speed precision drills that simply should not exist in the Bronze Age. But the most chilling discovery lies not in what the pyramid contains, but in what it might have been transmitting to the stars, a signal that was never meant to be decoded by us.
Imagine the Giza Plateau not as a silent graveyard of stone, but as a thrumming laboratory of sound. It is twilight, the air heavy with the scent of ozone and cooling limestone. Hundreds of priests stand in perfect, concentric circles around a multi-ton monolith, their bodies swaying in a rhythmic, hypnotic trance. The silence is absolute, until a single low-frequency hum begins to vibrate from the very marrow of the earth. In their hands, these masters of the unseen hold massive copper tuning forks, their prongs polished to a mirror sheen. As the head priest raises his sistrum, the rhythmic clatter of metal discs cuts through the desert air, acting as a sonic conductor. The chanting shifts, the frequency rising, narrowing, sharpening, until the sound is no longer just heard, but felt. It is a physical weight pressing against the chest, right? The massive limestone block, once immovable, begins to shudder. It is as if the rock has been stripped of its own gravity, unmoored from the laws of physics by a bridge of sound. There is no strain of ropes, no snapping of timber, no sweat of slave labor. There is only the directed resonance of human intent harmonizing with the bedrock of Egypt. The monolith lifts, hovering inches above the sand like a phantom, drifting toward its destination with the grace of a falling leaf. For a fleeting moment, humanity touched the power of the architects, manipulating the fundamental vibration of matter itself. Yet, as the last echo fades and the stone settles into place with a bone-jarring thud, the priests disperse into the shadows, leaving behind a silence that feels heavier than the monuments they built. But if this acoustic technology was the true secret behind the construction of the pyramids, why did it vanish from our collective memory? And more disturbingly, was this levitation merely a byproduct of a much darker, much larger energy experiment that we are only just beginning to uncover? The answers, my friends, lie buried deeper than any excavator has dared to go. The dust of millennia settles across the Giza Plateau, leaving a silence that rings with the memory of impossible vibrations. As the final gargantuan stone, the capstone, is lowered into place, it does not merely rest upon the structure, it locks.
You know, the geometry is just too precise, the alignment with the belt of Orion too mathematically perfect to be the work of primitive tools or manual labor. This was not a monument built by mere human sweat. It was a harmonic resonance brought to a frozen, crystalline state. Intrigued, inquisitive, look closely at the mortarless joints between these megaliths. They are not held together by gravity or simple friction, right? Evidence suggests that the sonic frequencies used to lift these massive blocks actually altered their molecular density upon contact. The stones were effectively fused, their surfaces vibrated into a state of semi-liquidity before snapping back into a solid, impenetrable whole. Reflective. That is exactly why these structures have outlasted empires, floods, and the relentless erosion of time. They are not merely piled stone, they are a geological anomaly created by sound.
But this was never intended to be a simple tomb. I mean, come on, that is just what they want us to believe. The placement of the capstone served as the final switch in a global network. By anchoring the pyramids into this specific geometric grid, the ancients created a planetary acoustic resonator. It was a machine designed to draw energy from the Earth itself, cycling it through the corridors and chambers to broadcast a constant low-frequency hum that bridged the gap between our world and the celestial alignment above. Imagine standing at the center of this grid at the moment of its completion, feeling the very ground beneath your feet thrum with the pulse of the stars. It was a mastery of physics that science is only now beginning to theorize. However, there is a lingering mystery that scholars have spent centuries trying to ignore. If this network was truly global, and if it was designed to tap into the fundamental vibrations of the universe, then where exactly was the energy being directed? And why, just as the system reached its full, terrifying potential, was it abruptly abandoned to the sands? The sands of Giza hold more than just granite and limestone. They hold a profound silence, a weight of history that we have only begun to scratch the surface of. If the ancients truly harnessed the resonant frequencies of the earth to move monoliths with nothing more than sound, why, does our modern history book insist on treating them as simple builders, reliant on nothing but copper chisels and brute labor? I mean, the answer lies not in a lack of evidence, but in a systematic erasure of a civilization that viewed technology through the lens of harmony rather than conquest. As the great empires shifted, a different paradigm took hold. The transition from the age of sound to the age of fire was not an evolution, it was a regression. We turned our backs on the subtle physics of vibration and moved toward the crude, destructive power of iron and flame. This was the era of the burning of the Great Library, a tragedy that wasn't merely a loss of scrolls, but the purposeful lobotomy of human knowledge. It was a calculated cull of the sciences that, if understood today, would render our heavy combustion-based engines and electrical grids entirely obsolete. Consider the possibility that we have been conditioned to believe our ancestors were primitive, purely to mask the reality that they possessed a sophistication we have yet to recover, right? The scholars and keepers of this frequency science weren't wiped out by a single war. They were marginalized by a rising tide of conquerors who valued what they could hold in their hand, swords, gold, and land, over the invisible forces that held the stars in their courses. The archives were purged, the oral traditions were ridiculed as superstition, and the stone monuments were repurposed as mere tombs, stripping them of their functional resonance.
we are left walking among the bleached bones of a machine we no longer know how to operate, living in the shadow of giants who danced with the laws of physics that we are only now, centuries later, beginning to stumble upon in our particle accelerators. But if this knowledge was so effectively buried, why do the stones themselves still carry the signature of that lost science? And more importantly, what happens when we finally stop listening to the historians and start listening to the echoes trapped within the granite? Because there is one final piece of the puzzle, a frequency hidden in plain sight, one that suggests the architects of the past weren't finished with their work when the light of their civilization began to fade.
The silence of the Great Pyramid is not an absence of sound. It is a masterfully orchestrated hold. As we move into the modern era, the gap between our understanding of physics and the architectural genius of the ancients, well, it is beginning to collapse. In labs across the globe, we are finally replicating the impossible. We are witnessing acoustic levitation, the use of precise oscillating sound waves to suspend matter, defying gravity, to hold tiny spheres in the air as if by an invisible hand. Thoughtfully, we look at these flickering laboratory experiments and call it innovation, right? But in truth, we are merely rediscovering the lost chords of an ancient symphony. When you stand in the king's chamber, you aren't standing in a tomb. You are standing inside an acoustic resonator, a machine built to harmonize with the vibrational pulse of the earth itself. You see, the architects did not move those multi-ton blocks through brute strength or slave labor. They moved them through resonance. They understood that everything in this universe, from the smallest atom to the most massive granite slab, has a resonant frequency. Dramatic, by tapping into that hidden, underlying hum, they did not fight gravity, they invited it to step aside. Solemn. This is the eternal symphony. It is a message etched in stone, left for a civilization that has spent thousands of years looking at the surface, blind to the vibrations that hold our very reality together. Direct, we have treated the Great Pyramid as a static monument, a silent tomb for a king, when in truth it is a blueprint. It is a testament to a time when humanity was not separate from the environment, but a conductor of its deepest laws. Hopeful, rising intensity, as we stand on the threshold of our own technological maturity, the ruins of Egypt stop being mere piles of rock. They become a call to return to that fundamental knowledge. If they could harness the power of sound to shake the world, what might we achieve if we stop trying to conquer nature and start learning to harmonize with it once again? Soft, contemplative. I leave you with this. If the ancients could sing the stones into the sky, what song are we currently failing to hear? Encouraging. If this glimpse into the resonance of the past has changed the way you view our origins, consider joining our exploration by hitting that subscribe button. And tell me in the comments, if you could harness the power of the Great Pyramid's frequency today, what is the first thing you would choose to lift?